is Bhumika Chauhan. Welcome back to our channel, and in today's video we are going to learn the part 1 of chapter 2 stories about flying. And this imaginary story basically conveys a very strong message that one learns by taking courage and not by sitting idle. So it's a story about a young seagull who is basically a young seagull is fed lovingly by his parents, but when the time comes like for him to fly, right, he feels afraid, right? And that is the entire story. So the story basically highlights the importance of family, highlights the importance of friends in one's life, that they are very important whenever we want to do something in our life, and whenever we are afraid of doing something in our life, they are the ones that show, they show courage. They are the ones who support us, right? So it gives us the message that one needs to believe in self, like we need to believe in ourselves to overcome all the hurdles of our life. So if you also feel that way, like you are not able to do a particular thing, or you're not able to reach, like you will not be able to do this, you will not be able to reach wherever you want to reach, you will not be able to achieve your goal, then this is a perfect example and a perfect story that you should know, and you will definitely feel, why? Something is there and I also can do it if this young seagull can do it. Okay, so yes, the young seagull was alone on his ledge. So he was all alone, right? And his two brothers and sisters had already flown away the day before. So basically his brother and sister had already learned to fly, right? And he had been afraid to fly with them, and he was not able to fly with them. He was afraid of fly because of, I think, the long stretch and the depth of the sea. So somehow when he had taken a little run forward to the brink of the ledge, right, brink as in at the end of the ledge. Ledge is basically a part of rock, right, a part of rock, okay? And he was basically running on that ledge, okay? And when he reaches at the brink, like at the end of that ledge, he feels scared. He feels scared and attempted to flap his wings. And whenever he tries to, flap his wings, he became afraid. A certain sort of terror every time seized him. He was not able to fly. He thought that he would die, right, if he took that flight. Like if he was so afraid. He was so afraid. He did not want to do that. He was like, no, I cannot do that. It doesn't matter that my brothers and sister, they were able to take that flight, but I am not able to do that. I am trying my best, but this is not for me. I cannot do this, right? So yes, the great expanse of sea stretched around beneath. The great expanse, as in the long stretched sea, the great depth of the sea, basically, scared him. He was afraid of that deep sea and that long and expanse of the sea. He was afraid of that, and it was such a long way down, miles down. Whenever he was looking like down and he was seeing that, oh my God, like it's too deep, I cannot take that flight. I'm trying my best, but this is like, I think he had some phobia, like height phobia or something, right? I cannot do this, I will die, my wings would not, support me. If I take that flight, if I take that plunge, I don't think that my wings are going to support me. So that may be the reason that he was not able to, he was actually, he did not have that belief that I can do this, right? I am meant for this, right? So yes, it was very tough for him. He felt certain that his wings would never support him, that they are going to betray him. He will take the plunge and his wings are not going to support him. They are not going to flap. I will die. I will not be able to take that flight, right? Because they are so small, or they are not that capable. They won't be able to handle the weight. There might be so many things that must be going on, right, in his head. So he was literally afraid of that deep sea below. Right, so the ridge was actually high and the seagull was a chotu sa bachcha. He's like a small child, right, and it's obviously a big thing. So he bent his head and ran away back to the little hole under the ledge. So he was coming like this, and he's trying to flap his wings, and then he's like, no, buddy, I can't do this. He's like that. So he bent his head and ran away back to the little hole. So there was this hole where he used to like sleep or something. Ledge is basically that ridge, a narrow horizontal shelf projecting from the wall. So basically, for example, it's a rock or it's a wall and this ledge is projecting from here and he's coming from here like he's running and trying to flap, and whenever he sees a deep sea below and he's like, no bro, and then he's like, no, I can't do this. So he was sleeping over there in that hole, and when each of his brothers and his little sister, whose wings were far shorter, he's saying that the wings of his brothers and the wings of his sisters were very short. They were able to fly, but ran to the brink. They basically ran to the brink, they flapped their wings, and their wings are shorter than mine, right, and flew away, and they took their flight. He failed to muster up that courage. So basically, what was that one thing that he did not have? The courage. He did not have the courage. He was not able to muster up that courage. Muster up as in, he was not able to, basically, he was like, I don't know. I think he's very afraid, right, of dying, that I will die, right? So I think that was the main thing, right? He was not that courageous, he was not that brave, he was coward, right? And he failed to muster up that courage to take that plunge as in that flight or that leap, right? Which appeared to him so desperate that he really wanted to do that, but he was not able to do that. His father and mother had come around calling to him shrilly as in they are screaming, they are upbraiding him. They are scolding, upbraiding as in scolding. So they are basically, I think, Indian sort of parents who they are trying to trigger a seagull, right? That you can't do anything. Come on, be a man, and something like that. They must be, so they were scolding him that I'm not going to give you food. You are grounded. You will die over here hungry. I am not going to. Give you any sort of, like, you are responsible. You are responsible for your all this entire thing. You will die there on this sledge out of hunger. We are not going to provide. So there was this fear obviously in him, and they are threatening him to let him starve on this sledge, that we will let you starve on this ledge, we are not going to provide you food unless he flew away. If you are not going to fly, we are not going to give you food, right? So but for the life of him, he could not move, but he was so afraid that he was not able to even move. So he had that great fear, and that great fear actually caught him. His heart stood still. I think it's not his mistake. Every person, every child is different, right? It's that simple. His brother, his sister, they were able to fly. They had that courage. But it's not like he's also same. No, he's not the same person. He is a different child. He is not able to muster up that courage. Right? So yes, it's completely fine. That was 24 hours ago. And all these upbraiding and calling him shrilly, everything was happening 24 hours ago. Since then, nobody had come near him. So they decided that we are not going to go and talk to him. We are not going to say anything now. Whatever he wants to do, he can do. But we are not going to give you food. Okay. So he's hungry now. So he's basically hangry as in angry and desperate and he wants to take that flight because he is hungry and he's not able to muster up that courage. And the day before, all day long, he had watched his parents flying about with his brothers and sister. And he basically saw everything his parents were doing, right? For his brother, for his sister, they were praising them, they were giving them food, they are teaching them everything. They are perfecting them in the art of, art of flight, that how you have to fly, how you have to skim over the waves, how you can do that, right? So how you can move, skim as in to move above the surface of the waves. So yes, they were doing all these things, like how to dive for the fish. They were teaching each and everything. But he had in fact seen his older brother catch his first herring. Oh, he saw his elder brother. What he was doing? Catching his first fish. Herring is a sort of a type of fish. And devour it. Like he was enjoying it. Devour. He was enjoying that food. Standing on a rock while his parents circled around. And his parents were praising him. Wow, very nice, proud of you. And all the morning, the whole family had walked about on the big plateau, midway down the opposite cliff, taunting him with his cowardice. Now see, this happens in our family also. Like, look at your brother, look at your sister, right? She's very sorted, she's very calm, she's very intelligent, she knows how to do stuff, right? And look at you. You're all clumsy, you're all messy, you don't know how to talk, you don't know how to sit, you don't know how to carry yourself, you're idiot, you're stupid, right? So same thing is happening over here with our young seagull. He is getting all these taunts and all these things, like all these, I would say he was not feeling good about it. And I was feeling like, see, my older brother is very nice, he took his first flight, now he's enjoying his first fish and parents are very proud of him. So he's feeling less of himself, right? So walked on about the plateau midway down the opposite cliff, taunting him with his cowardice. So they are taunting him, you coward, you can't take a flight. Look at your brother, he's able to do that, he's devouring it, he's doing it, he's enjoying it. Like, we are very proud of him. So basically they are triggering the ego of young seagull, that, come on man, look at your brother, do something. So he was basically alone on this ledge and he's seeing all these things happening. So there is a proper cinema going on and he is feeling that pressure that I have to take that plunge, I have to take that flight. But he had been afraid, right? He had been afraid. He was, he had taken a little run, like forward to the brink of the ledge, but he attempted to flap the wings, but the great expanse of the sea, right, that depth of the sea is not helping. It is not at all helping. It's like a very long way down, miles down, and he felt certain that his wings would never support him. So now he's facing all these taunting and all these praising of his brother and sister and everything. Now he's thinking about, and he's obviously hungry. The sun was now ascending the sky, so now sun is coming up and blazing on his ledge that faced the south, and is like basically shining and it's hot over there. He felt the heat because he had not eaten since the previous nightfall and he was hungry, he was hungry, right? And he's feeling dizzy, I guess. So he stepped slowly out to the brink of the ledge. Then he came and obviously stood here at the brink of the ledge and standing on one leg. Now he plays a trick, and this is my favorite part. What he does, he basically stands on one leg, right, with the other leg hidden under his wing, and he hides his other leg under his wing. He closed one eye, then he closes one eye, then the other, then he closes another and pretended to be falling asleep. And he was like, oh, I'm sleeping. Still, they took no notice of him. So he was basically trying to get the attention of parents. And this is the trick that he's playing. If I do this, if I pretend to sleep, they will, think that, oh my God, he's sleeping and he can die, right? So, nothing was, I would say, nothing was happening. Like, he was thinking that his parents would pay attention, but that was not at all, like, not working for him. So all these tricks are of waste. They are all in vain. So amazing. I can relate because I have seen like kids do these things, and it's like they try to fool us. And it's very cute. So he saw two brothers and a sister lying on the plateau dozing with their heads sunk into their necks. So his brother and sister, they are basically enjoying, they are sunbathing, they are sitting like this and their necks are in their heads are in their necks, sunk in their necks, and they are like this and enjoying, and they are full and they have eaten good food and they are basically living their life, right? So his father was preening the feather on his white neck, preening, making an effort to maintain feathers. So his father is basically preening all the feathers. Only his mother was looking at him. So, like she is pretending that she doesn't care, but she actually does, right? She was standing on a little high hump, and the plateau, her white breast thrust forward. So she was like, her white breast thrust forward, and she was like this. Okay, and she's looking at, and she was standing on a hump, like there must be something like this over there on that plateau, and she was sitting there with her breast thrust over, and she's looking at her kid, right? And now and again she tore at a piece. Now she knows that what should I do, how I can make my young seagull take that flight. Mother knows everything, bro. Mother knows everything, right? So, yes, she tore at a piece of fish that lay at her feet and then scraped each side of her beak on the rock. So, what she was doing? She was doing the favorite thing. Like the young seagull likes to do this. He likes to eat his fish like that. Like he used to do this tearing, right? And then she was wetting her beak, making it sharp so that she can, tear it apart and then she can devour it. She's doing all these things, and she knows that young seagull loves it. He likes to eat his fish like that. And the sight of the food maddened him, and he is hungry at this point of time. And when he saw that my mother has a fish and she's eating it like the way I want to eat, like, now this is too much. So this is like the I would say this is the best trigger, and this is the point of breakdown for our young seagull. This was the point of breakdown for young seagull. How he loved to tear food that way, because he also loved, right? So yes, scraping his beak now and again to wet it. So he's scraping his beak like this and this and this and this, basically to make it sharp, so that they can easily tear their food like that, and they can easily eat their food. So ga ga ga, he cried, begging her to bring him some food. When he saw his mother, he was like, ga ga ga. That means he was saying that, Mama, I want food. Please bring me that fish you're eating. I want that fish. Why are you eating that? I want food. Gau khala. So his mother screamed, like the mother here screams, Gau khala. If you want food, take that plunge. She screamed back derisively, like in a manner showing someone that you're stupid. So she's saying you're stupid. Go call. He kept calling plaintively, and after a minute or so, he uttered a joyful scream. So the young seagull, after a few minutes, uttered a joyous scream. What happened actually? His mother had picked up a piece of the fish and was flying across to him with it. So her mother took a piece and she was flying towards him. And he's thinking that Mama is coming. And now I can have food and I am hungry. Now what happens? He leaned out eagerly. So he was on that brink and he leaned out to have that fish, that piece of fish, tapping the rock with his feet. So he's tapping the rock. Wow, khana, 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 khana. Trying to get nearer to her as she flew across. Right? So he was doing like, Mama, I am coming. And her mom was like, yeah, baby, I'm coming. And she stops. And our young seagull thinks, why did you stop, Mama? Why did you stop? And because he was so hungry, he took that plunge. Because he was maddened with hunger. He was getting crazy because of hunger. But when she was just opposite to him, she halted, like she stopped. Her wings motionless, so she was there with that piece of fish in her mouth, the piece of fish in her beak, almost within the reach of his beak. So here is the young seagull, here is mother, and they are this close, and he wants food and it's this close. He waited a moment in surprise, wondering. He was like, Mama, come! Why did you halt? Why did you stop? Why she did not come near? And then, maddened by hunger, he dived at the fish. Hunger is that one thing that can make you do crazy things, right? So everyone is doing everything for this papi pate. Right? So yes, with a loud scream, he fell outwards and downwards into space. So he was like, okay, he dived at food and he was like going down, 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 down. And then a monstrous terror seized him and his heart stood still. He was terrorized. He was feeling, I would say that he was not able to feel anything. He thought that I am going to die today. That's it. That was the feeling. His heart stood still. He could hear nothing. Because of that terror, because of that fear. But it only lasted a minute. That's a good thing. That fear lasted only for a minute. The next moment he felt his wings spread outwards. Because he is a seagull and he can fly. It's a natural thing for him. So after a minute, the next moment he felt his wings spread outwards. Right? So it's normal reaction. Right? The wind rushed against his breast feathers, then under his stomach. So he can feel the wind under his breast feathers and then his stomach and again his wings. He could feel the tips of his wings cutting through the air. He could feel that his wings are cutting through the air, that he is able to fly. He was not falling headlong now, that he's not falling down. Right? He was soaring gradually downwards and outwards. He was no longer afraid. He just felt a bit dizzy, and he was feeling dizzy because he was hungry also. Right? Yes, so he was soaring, gradually soaring, as in doing like this, going up and down, downwards and outwards, and he was no longer afraid. Then he flapped his wings once and soared upwards. Then he flapped his wings and he went upwards, and he's so happy, and his mother is so happy, and they are all circling around him, making a loud noise. He answered her with another scream. Then his father flew over him screaming. So they were all again praising young seagull also, like they were praising his younger brother and sister. Right? So yes, it was amazing. Then his father flew over him screaming. He saw his two brothers and sisters also praising him, curveting and banking and soaring and diving. So they are all leaping like a horse. Wow, very nice. So they are all praising him, right? And congratulating him, basically. They were all happy that he also took his first flight. So then he completely forgot that he had not always been able to fly. And in that moment, he completely forgot that few minutes back, he was not able to fly. He was afraid to muster up that courage. But now he's flying, he's soaring, he's doing everything his brother and sisters were doing. So, and commended himself to dive and soar and curve, shrieking shrilly, and he's basically screaming, and he's very happy, and he's showing that happiness. by doing all these things like this, that I'm so happy and I can do this, right? He was near the sea now, flying straight over it, facing straight out over the ocean. He saw a vast green sea beneath him with little ridges moving over it, and he turned his beak sideways and cawed amusedly. So what he did, he saw a vast green sea beneath him. So he can clearly see that depth of the sea and the stretch of that sea and the little ridges moving over it, like all these waves, ridges as in waves. And he turned his beak sideways and cawed amusedly. Okay, his parents and his brother and sister had landed on this green flooring. So he was looking at his brother and sister like this, and what they were doing, they had landed on that on those ridges, and they are basically moving on water, on the surface of water, right? So they were beckoning to him, calling shrilly. He dropped his leg to stand on the green sea. So they were saying that do it like this, take it, drop your legs in the sea, right? To stand on it. His legs sank into it. He screamed with fright and attempted. Again, he was scared, like, oh my God, I'm going to sink, like I'm going to drown, right? But he was tired and weak with hunger and he could not rise, right? And because at that time he was very tired and very weak because of hunger, so he was exhausted because of this strange exercise, and his feet sank into the green sea, and then his belly touched it and he sank no further. So his belly touched the sea, and then he did not drown, obviously. He did not sank no farther, and he was floating on it, and around him his family was screaming, praising him, and their beaks were offering him scraps of dogfish, and he had made his first flight like that. Amazing, no? Such a beautiful chapter. I have always loved this chapter, right? Yes. Amazing, amazing chapter. Yes. Okay. Now I am going to share few important questions, but before that we have another part, the black aeroplane. So we have two parts of this chapter. Part 1, as you all know, his first flight, and part 2 is the black aeroplane. Again, an amazing story. An amazing story. Let's go, guys. The black aeroplane. The moon was coming up in the east behind me, and stars were shining in the clear sky above me. So he's basically giving us the picture, the image, that the plot. Okay, so the moon was coming up in the east, moon was there in the sky behind me, and stars were shining in the clear sky. So basically he's saying that the climate was very nice, the weather was very good, it was suitable for a very smooth flight, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky, so everything was great. Like there was no indication of any there was no indication of bad weather or anything, that this flight is not going to be a safe one. There was nothing like that. Everything was good, everything was clear, the sky was clear. I was ready for that flight, and I was happy to be alone high up above the sleeping countryside. So he was like, it was very calm, it was very soothing. I was in my aeroplane, right? And I can clearly see the city sleeping peacefully, calmly. I was flying my old Dakota aeroplane over France back to England. So I was going back to England. So I was flying old Dakota. I was dreaming of my holiday and looking forward to being with my family. So he was very desperate to be with his family, right? He was very eager, he was very desperate. And I looked at my watch, 1:30 in the morning. So what was the time? The time was 1:30 in the morning. I should call Paris Control soon, I thought. Okay. As I looked down past the nose of the aeroplane, I saw the lights of a big city in front of me. So he was saying that I saw the lights of a big city in front of me, and I thought of I should call Paris Control soon. I switched. What is down past the nose of the aeroplane? Nose of the aeroplane is basically the front part. So he could clearly see the city, right? The lights of big city. I switched on the radio and said, Paris Control, Dakota DS088 here. Can you hear me? Okay. In my own, I am on my way to England, over. So he was basically conveying that I am on my way to England, and this is Dakota and I am flying this plane. The voice from the radio answered me immediately. DS088, I can hear you. You ought to turn 12 degrees west now. So he gave him the order that you have to turn like this and everything. I checked the map and the compass switched over to my second and last fuel tank. So he checked the map and he checked the compass, and switched over to my second and last fuel tank, and he switched over to that second fuel tank and turned the Dakota 12 degrees west towards England. And I basically, on the radio, he got the guidance, like he got the route that you have to turn like this to go to England. I will be in time for breakfast, I thought. So he was thinking that I'll do that English breakfast with my family, and he was very eager and very desperate for that. A good big English breakfast, everything was going well. It was an easy flight. So till now, everything is sorted, everything is good, right? He's very happy to be in that aeroplane because he was going to meet his family, right? And he wants to reach as soon as possible. So he was thinking that I will reach, I'll be in time for breakfast and I'll have that English breakfast and everything. So he's basically planning the holiday with his family and everything. I checked the map. Okay, Paris was about 150 kilometers. That's not a long distance. Behind me, when I saw the clouds, storm clouds. They were huge. So he was saying that Paris was about 150 kilometers behind me when I saw the clouds. So he crossed Paris. After 150 kilometers, he saw these clouds, and these are also storm clouds, not normal clouds. They were huge. They looked like black, big mountains, right? Standing in front of me across the sky. I knew I could not fly up and over them. So he was like, I cannot fly up and over them. Like, I cannot. They are dangerous. Right? And I did not have enough fuel to fly around them, and I did not have that much of fuel because he has switched to the second tank. Right? So he cannot go like this. Right? So he did not have that much of fuel. Right? So I ought to go back to Paris, I thought. So he thought that I should go back to Paris. But I wanted to get home. So he was so desperate to go home. I wanted that breakfast. For that breakfast, he was ready to, risk his life. Oh my God. I'll take the risk, I thought, and flew that old Dakota straight into the storm. He's stupid. Inside the clouds, everything was suddenly black. So obviously, he was not able to see anything. And it was impossible to see anything outside the aeroplane. The old aeroplane jumped and twisted in the air. Because that old Dakota, the name of the aeroplane says it, that I'm old. Please don't do these experiments with me, right? I am not that strong. So it twisted in the air. It's like, and I looked at the compass and I could not believe my eyes. He was like, the compass was turning round and round and round. The compass was like zzz. So it was dead. It was not working. And the other instruments were suddenly dead too. I tried the radio. There is no response. Paris controls, they were not able to listen. Can you hear me? There was no answer. Radio was dead. So radio was dead. Compass was dead. Turned on the second fuel tank. And I could not see where I was. I was lost in the storm. And he did not know where he was going. And he's in that storm. No one would know. No one would know if he died. Like if he dies. Yes. Then in the black clouds quite near me, I saw another aeroplane. So it's like God is helping him. It had no lights on its wing, but I could see it flying next to me. So basically, I think his subconscious, because he was so scared, so he was imagining, I think, that another aeroplane, I'm not sure of that there is a real one over here. I could see the pilot's face turn towards me. So that pilot in the other plane, he turned towards him. I was very glad to see another person, and he was like, oh, thank God there is another stupid person like me over here in this storm. And he lifted one hand and waved. I think it's completely his imagination. Follow me, he was saying, follow me. He knows that I'm lost. I thought he's trying to help me. He turned his aeroplane slowly to the north in front of my Dakota, and so that it would be easier for me to follow him. Okay. And I was very happy to go behind the strange aeroplane like an obedient child. So I was very glad. I was very thankful that, okay, someone is here to help me. So I was like, I am going to do whatever you are going to tell me. Order. I am here. Yes, sir. I am going to follow you like an obedient child. Because there is nothing else I can do right now. My compass is not working. My radio is not working. I have turned on the second fuel and I am stuck in the storm. I can't do anything. You are the only hope. After half an hour, the strange black aeroplane was still there in front of me in the clouds. Now there was only enough fuel in the old Dakota's last tank to fly or 5 or 10 minutes more. So that much of fuel was left. And I was starting to feel frightened again. And he was like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Right? I have only fuel for 5 to 10 minutes. But then he started to go down and I followed through the storm. Then the aeroplane started to go down, the black aeroplane, and he followed him. Suddenly I came out of the clouds and saw 2 long straight lines of lights in front of me. So he was very glad that, okay, finally I came out of the storm and there is this airport. And he felt like, oh, runway, I am safe, I am safe. I turned to look for my friend in the black aeroplane. But there was no black aeroplane. There was no one there. But the sky was empty. There was nothing there. The black aeroplane was gone. I could not see it anywhere. I landed and was not sorry to walk away from the old Dakota near the control tower. He's like, thank God. I don't want to fly you again. I went and asked a woman in the control center where I was and who the other pilot was, because he wanted to say thank you. He was like, who was that guy who actually helped me? I was lost in the storm. I was about to die, right? She looked at me very strangely and then laughed. Another aeroplane? Are you crazy? Up there in this storm, do you really think anyone is that stupid like you? No other aeroplanes were flying tonight. Yours was the only one I could see on the radar. There was no other aeroplane. So he was like, who was that person? Who helped him to arrive there safely? Like, who helped me to arrive there safely? He was questioning. Right? Without a compass or a radio and without any more fuel in the tanks. Who was the pilot on the strange black aeroplane flying in the storm without lights? I think it's completely an imaginary aeroplane. I don't feel like it's not possible, because he was very eager to reach England, and he was very desperate, and he was now stuck right in that particular situation. So he was basically trying to get some courage, because he was so afraid, right? So his mind actually made him believe that there is another aeroplane and you have to follow that aeroplane, right? So it's a great story, guys, and I love it. I literally love this story. It's an amazing story. So who helped me to arrive there safely without a compass or a radio and without any more fuel in my tanks? Who was the pilot on the strange black aeroplane flying in the storm without lights? He was actually questioning who was that one person. I don't know. Amazing, yaar. Bahut badhiya. I love this chapter. It's a beautiful, beautiful chapter. And now we will do a quick summary of this chapter, and then I will give you few important questions, okay, of two stories about flying. Okay, so the first story is about a young seagull, right, who is too afraid to fly. And the second story is about a pilot who gets lost in the storm and is helped by a mysterious plane, right? But both stories teach us about facing fear and the importance of courage. So please do write down these lines, that both of these stories, they teach us that we have to face our fear. It is important to face our fear if we want to reach somewhere in our life, right? So first one was, the young seagull was alone on his ledge. His 2 brothers and sisters had already flown away, obviously the day before, and he was afraid to fly. When he tried to flap his wings at the brink of the ledge, he looked down at the great expanse of the sea miles below and became scared. So he was not able to muster up that courage, as I told you, that he thought that I'm going to die if I took that flight. Right, so he felt sure his wings would never support him. Please do underline these parts. These are the important key points from the chapter. Okay, so his parents called to him shrilly, upbraiding him and threatening to let him starve, but he could not move. So this was the trick of parents. Like, they wanted to trigger, they wanted to basically hurt his ego, that we would let you die over here, that you will starve over here and you will die. We are not going to help you. If you want food, take that flight, take that plunge. So for 24 hours, nobody came near him. He was very hungry. He saw his mother tearing, right, at a piece of fish, and the sight of food basically maddened him. He was getting crazy because of food, and he cried ga ga ga. He was basically begging his mother, Mama, please give me food. And his mother screamed back, if you want food, then take that flight. I'm not going to give you. Mocking, her mother was mocking, right? And his mother halted in the air, obviously, almost within the reach of his beak. Maddened by hunger, he dived at the fish with a loud scream and he fell outwards and downwards into the space. Yes. So a monstrous terror seized him. Underline that part. Monstrous terror seized him, but then he felt his wings spread outwards. And the wind rushed against his feathers. He was not falling. He was soaring. He was no longer afraid. That terror was there only for a minute. And now he was very confident. He did not even realize that a few minutes ago, like earlier, I was not able to take that flight. I was afraid of flying and now I'm soaring. Right? So that's how he made his first flight. Now that black aeroplane, the pilot was flying in his old Dakota aeroplane from France to England. These are all the important parts. You need to underline these parts in your book. The sky was clear, but then he saw huge storm clouds that looked like black mountains, and he did not have enough fuel to fly around them. He decided to take that risk and flew straight into the storm. Then inside the clouds, everything was suddenly black and his compass was dead and his radio was dead too. He was lost in the storm and was very frightened. Then he saw another aeroplane and in the clouds with no lights, obviously, and the pilot waved at him and signaled, follow me. So the narrator was following that black aeroplane obediently like a child, right? And the black aeroplane guided him through the storm. But when he reached there and he asked basically he asked that particular woman over there that who was the woman no other aeroplane was flying there. So he asked who was that person who helped me. So she was like, no one else was there up in the sky except you, my brother, right, in this storm. So the black pilot was left wondering. So the pilot was left wondering who was the pilot on the strange black aeroplane. So lesson from the seagull. Number one, fear is natural. Everyone feels fear like the seagull did. Very nice. Second one, courage comes from need. Right? So the seagull only flew when he was maddened by hunger. Number three, success is possible. So he discovered he could fly all along. His family celebrated him, praising him and offering him scraps of dogfish. Right? Take help when offered. The pilot was saved because he followed the stranger. Some mysteries remain. The story ends with a question, making us wonder about the kindness of strangers or even a miracle. Okay, everyone? Yes. So I wish and I hope you liked today's session. These are some short questions. Please take a screenshot. Number one, the young seagull's fear of flying and reluctance to leave his ledge contribute to the development of the theme of independence and courage in the story. Justify. Number two, how does the serene atmosphere described by the narrator contribute to the mood and anticipation of his journey back to England? Right? Elaborate in 40 words with reference to the extract. Number three, motivation influences our willingness to overcome challenges and eventually succeed. How does the young seagull in two stories about flying demonstrate this? Do not write summary in such types of questions. Okay, please do understand that. Self-doubt and fear, this is very important. Self-doubt and fear often act as barriers to success. On the other hand, curiosity leads to learning new things. Justify the statement citing instances from his first flight and Madam rides the bus. Again, comparison based question, like they are going to pick two chapters, they are going to bring two themes, they are going to bring two characters and they are going to ask questions like that. Please be prepared for such types of questions. You have been asked to present an evaluation of the approaches of both the baby seagull and the pilot who was lost in the clouds, okay, towards achieving their dream of conquering the sky. So you have to present an evaluation, like how they approached their respective difficult situation, right? Okay. Short question mein, Valli was sensitive, but at the same time she was fearless and quite determined. Think of another character from your textbook who displays similar character traits. Compare and contrast the lives of Valli and the other character that you have chosen from the text of Two Stories About Flying. You may begin this way. The characters who are fearless and determined from two texts, Valli, this. If you want answers, if you want to discuss answers, please comment answers in the comment section. We will discuss all these questions. Okay, so that's it everyone. I wish and I hope you liked today's session. Bye bye, take care, all the best.